People will often hear me describe myself not just as a physical therapist, but as a sports biomechanist and an injury prevention specialist. And part of the reason that you hear me do that is number one is last 20 years of my clinical career has been around analyzing human movement. As I previously mentioned, the 3D motion technology that we developed has really allowed us to amass a lot of data related to human movement. And more importantly, it's taught us a lot about what movement patterns lead towards certain types of injuries, whether it's an ankle injury, a knee injury, a hip injury, or a low back injury. And more importantly, what we do from a clinical perspective, from a training perspective, to actually improve the way that those movements occur. And what we find is that when you improve those, not only do you minimize the risk for injury, but what you also do is you maximize athletic performance. So sprint speed goes up, vertical jump goes up, power output goes up, et cetera. And we see that across all types of sports. So, what I've been able to do is apply that knowledge to help to prevent ACL injuries specifically. That's where we started. And what we found is that when we applied that same methodology to all athletic injuries, is that we saw a 58.2% reduction of all lower extremity injuries. So taking this exact same approach that we were doing with ACLs, what we were finding is that these same principles applied, and when applied, actually reduced all lower extremity injuries. Now, the really interesting thing is, and the reason I call myself an injury prevention specialist, is because the same principles that you apply to an athlete can also be applied to special forces, to military personnel, to firefighters, to police officers. So no matter what your sport is, no matter what your occupation is, if you are in a physically challenging occupation or sport, in a sport where you have to make cutting types of things and rely on stability on one leg, running, jogging, those kinds of things, then these principles have a significant application. So what we found is that when we apply these same principles to sports, to tactical athletes, your firefighters, your police officers, to your military personnel, what we see is that these injury rates go down across the board. So it really, when I say injury prevention specialist, I'm not an expert because I don't know if anybody's really an expert. But where I do specialize is really taking that sports biomechanics aspect and applying that to multiple populations.